Welcome to Work Passion Fit. I am John Francis, owner and operator of Theonera, a recruitment and retention firm, and your host to episode number 33. Work Passion Fit talks with CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business leaders to understand what they are truly passionate about and what their core values are. We get beyond the what and discover the who and the why behind the companies. We find out how their passions and their values have manifested themselves in their work. Today's show, we are off to Hay River, Northwest Territories, and we have Kevin Wallington, Sales and Marketing Manager of Polar Egg. Good day, Kevin.
Good day, John.
Hey, listen, reading your bio, I was very intrigued. Obviously, you're up in Northwest Territories now. You weren't originally from there. You were from BC and you moved up there and have basically since 94 spent your whole life up in Northwest Territories. You are in the sales and marketing team, part of the leadership team at Polar Egg, bringing agriculture, fresh products to the North. I'm really intrigued. There's a lot that we can talk about today about the North, about the need for sustainable food and healthy food up there. But fundamentally, I want to just start first and foremost from how did you get to this point where you are right now in your career?
Thank you, John. Yeah, it's been a great adventure. Growing up, I was one of four boys, and like you said, had a chance to go from the mountains to the prairies and then to the Northwest Territories at a really pivotal time in my life, going into middle school and seeing the North creating opportunities that I'd never have elsewhere. And so I've seen as I've spent, time growing up in the North and growing in my career and my life that hasn't changed. The experiences of the North are still there. Doors open and there's needs and there's very few people. And so a lot of times you get to do things you probably would never have a chance to do otherwise. And so I think that, looking back over just my time here and my return to the North after school and spending some time in nonprofit and then working throughout the Northwest Territories, getting a chance to travel ice roads as far as Tuktoyaktuk and into a lot of the remote communities, in one of my jobs, it really gave me a sense of just how incredible the people and the geography and also the challenges were. And so coming back here to Hay River and really embarking on a lot of local projects with sport and music and nonprofit work, I realized that there was just too much that I was doing both between my projects and my job. And so I had to decide to either do my projects for a living or do my job for a living. And so I decided to take a chance and start a company to start doing project management, which led me into an opportunity to work with the grading station at Polar Egg. And that has led me down a path to get involved in bringing leadership and having an opportunity to be a part of this discussion of sustainable food in the Northwest Territories.
Kevin, I'll be very honest, I've never been to the Northwest Territories or Yukon. I'd love to go sometime. Listening to what you're saying, I get the sense that it's a big, small community where, yes, you're spread out very far and the distance between communities is great, but there, as opposed to being lost and isolated, I get the sense that there is truly a bond about the people who are living in the North and dedicating their life to the North. It's a case of loving where you're at. I want to ask you this. As you're building your career and as you're with Polar Egg, what have you found as some of your true passions and values? What do you really care about in life, and how is that all manifested in your daily life?
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that, throughout the time of the North, as you said, there's this rich history of community that exists. And as you travel and you meet people, you hear the stories and how they all begin to intersect. And I think it's a Canadian story. It's funny how small a community things really are as you get to know more people. And you find out that, that there's connections all over the place. And so throughout my time here in the North, I think really the true passion that has risen, to the top for me is bringing people together and bringing ideas together to find creative solutions for these challenges that we face, because there's so many. And the challenges that we face here in the Northwest Territories aren't any different than any of the other remote northern areas in Canada, right across the country. And so it's really exciting because as you start to meet individuals in academia and in business and in government and nonprofit, and there's lots of funding out there in the Northwest Territories and other northern areas because they're wanting to meet some of these challenges. You start to bring people together and you start to have conversations about how do things that have no connection connect, and how can those solutions begin to come together, and those synergies of people having discussions and bringing ideas together all of a sudden start to create new opportunities. And I think that some of the most exciting projects that I'm working on are a result of those kinds of conversations. And, and so I think that I've really began to get excited about how our company can take a lead role in starting these conversations, not only for the things we're doing, but encouraging other people in other sectors and, to do the same.
Let me ask you this. Why agriculture? I mean, it might be so straightforward as, hey, listen, John, everybody eats and we need healthy food. But what is it about the agricultural industry that attracted you to Polar Egg?
Well, my father stepped in, and he didn't have any prior experience in farming to take over a farm that was really struggling here back in the early 2000s. And so at the time I was working in other jobs and positions, and I saw what he was doing, and it was an immense challenge for him. But they brought a farm from the brink of closure, and that really would have closed the door on agriculture in the Northwest Territories in that capacity. I think that if the farm would have closed, they probably would have relocated that. But the quota being under the supply managed system, it was an opportunity for us to really build a foundation with this industry that would allow things to grow. The government at the time had no legislation for agriculture. We have no, land, ability to access land for agriculture. None of those things at the time were in place. And so that was a really pivotal piece. And so when I started my company, the owner of that farm at that time approached me and said, hey, we'd really like to get our local eggs back in our local market, because that's the whole point of having fresh local supply. And so instead of shipping all these eggs back down south, why aren't we selling them in the Northwest Territories? So that's what really got me embarking on this idea of food, and really got me connected to the system as I began to see really how immense it is, for one, but second, how challenging it is to, break into this sector. And so, we began that process of reestablishing that grading station under the Polar Egg brand. I had an incredible graphic design team that put together all the branding that you see. And, the work that they did has been really such a massive part of the success of people of the North accepting that this is a product they can trust, and this is a company that they can get behind, and so that adventure has been one that really brought us down this road of agriculture.
Interesting. You mentioned the word challenge, right, in your discussion there. I wanted to ask you this, and I'm thinking of all the possible immense challenges you have up north. I'm thinking first and foremost just the distance of getting your product to the various markets. But tell me about some of the challenges that you've encountered in managing Polar Egg, and how have those, let me ask you this, how are those challenges reinforced or further enabled your deep passions for agriculture in the North?
Credibility. That was the biggest challenge that we faced when we start, because the North was full of failed stories. It was full of attempts to do things that were, underpinned by government subsidy, and, that failed, and, failed for whatever reasons. But what it did is it instilled in people that we can't do that up here. And so the biggest challenge when we got going was, how do we establish credibility in terms of them being able to go to the store, and when they see those eggs on the shelf, they say, I trust that, because at the time, I had the feeling that a northern product meant that it was a lesser product. There was less put into it. There was, and again, that this is just another failed project that we're going to add to our list. And so it really forced us to take a different look at how we were going to approach doing this. And I remember doing a presentation at a chamber event in Yellowknife, and one of the individuals there came to me after and said, I don't understand your business model. You got the grading station going, but you didn't have pre-established agreements with everybody before you got going. That doesn't make any sense. And I said, well, the reality is, before we turned that grading machine on, none of us knew how it worked. And so we weren't even sure what we were going to do. I mean, that first day, I still remember we hit that button and away we go. And I mean, we had all of our Canadian Food Inspection Agency programs up and running, had everything certified. But could our team deliver?
Yeah.
And so what I didn't want to do is go out and make promises, these grandiose promises about how we were going to get eggs in every community of the North, and then we couldn't get them off our line. And so it was a very small amount that we sent to Yellowknife, and here in Hay River we started with 2 stores and added a distributor, and we started working our way slowly. And, so that was challenge number 1, was how do we build that credibility? And thankfully we were able to do that. I mean, my big thing was we don't want any issues in year 1, no recalls or no quality issues, nothing. And so we worked really hard at focusing on that. And then the second challenge after that, after we started to see people really getting behind this product and this idea, was the fact that food is a big industry. And the reality is a lot of these stores, and especially in the North, we have very few that are functioning here, especially in some of the remote communities. They already had pre-established agreements with other graders in Canada.
Right.
And so how do you go through the process of establishing a relationship and doing it properly and going through the right channels? Because, you can go in and coerce a manager in a small community to take your eggs, but you might be getting that manager into a bit of heat with his team back at wherever head office is in Toronto or Winnipeg or Vancouver. And so we've had to really establish those relationships over the last, 6, 7 years that we've been working on this project. And it's actually funny that one of those organizations called me about a week ago and said, we're ready to start ordering.
Interesting.
So, we had to work through those processes and really, determine how we were going to get into, into the supply chain as well.
Listen, I want to ask you a quick question. And being down here in Waterloo, Ontario, there's a lot of rural farms out our way at the edge of the city. Was there any side product to the polar egg business? And what I'm thinking is chickens lay manure. What have you done? What have you done with the manure? I mean, have you used that in an environmental process? Have you converted it to soil? Have you shipped it down south? What about some of those extra challenges of running the business and the waste?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. And to me, I mean, waste is probably the biggest challenge, but the greatest opportunity that we have. And I don't think that's just here in the Northwest Territories. As we've traveled, throughout to different places around the world. We went to the Netherlands and had a chat with companies there to see what they're doing. They're pelletizing their manure, and it's become a really lucrative product for them. It went from being a liability to something that's really an opportunity. And so we brought that home and we began working on that. I mean, we have an area where we have years and years of manure that has been stockpiled. And so this is a big issue because we're looking at developing agriculture for the Northwest Territories. And one of the things that we don't have when you get into the Shield country and up into the tundra area is soil.
Right.
And so, we began exploring options in terms of how we could do this, methane digesters and, other methods and composting. And so we have spent a good deal of time. And it's actually interesting to bring this up because we connected with a company out of Chicago, and they have a technology from South Korea that, intakes about 15 tons a day and takes the water out of it and kills the pathogens, and you have the output of a nice compost of about 5 tons a day.
Right.
And so when we're actually right in the middle now of closing the deal on getting one of these pieces of equipment here in the north, so that we can begin to build augmented soil and utilize that. Now, there has been some smaller amounts of the manure that has been used that was composted in the past. The biggest challenge I find is ensuring that you don't jump ahead of your process. And my concern always was that if we dove right in and started, telling everybody that we have this poultry manure, that if it wasn't properly processed and taken care of, the last thing we need is for somebody to scorch their yard, and that will be forever in their mind. And so you come back and say, we've got a great product and, we've done all these things. And so I think that one of the challenges has been making sure that we lay the foundation to get this product out into the north, but we make sure that it's done right so that when we do it, that it's a great experience for people. And again, that confidence thing, it's people trusting that what they're getting is not just an opportunity to make a few bucks, but it's something that's going to build a foundation for a food industry. And so that's going to be a big step for us this year as we begin to see that equipment come together. And we see that product moving here in 2018.
You know what? It sounds as though with you being in the north, it's actually a huge bonus and benefit to you. It sounds as though with all the challenges, the fact that you don't have the soil, there's some places with the permafrost, so you're basically, it sounds as though you're forced to go slower. You're forced to take a step back and say, what are some of the issues? What if this happens? What if that happens? So at the end of the day, instead of just rushing out a product and selling it and having issues and problems, you're making sure that anything that goes out there is properly done. So it almost sounds, the fact that you're in the north has been a huge, huge bonus and benefit to your business.
Absolutely. I mean, it's tough because it goes against my zeal to want to move forward and to forge on and, to finish one thing and go to the next. And I think it's been good practice for me in terms of having to mature in my own personal approach to management and projects to really try and focus on, achieving one thing at a time. I mean, there's lots of moving parts. I've been saying to people, no loose clothing. There's lots of moving parts, so you don't want to get caught in it. And so I think that we've had to really just be careful that we don't, bite off more than we can chew. And that we're making sure we're focusing on one thing. But you're right that the north is really an excellent place. And there's so many challenges that if you're not careful, you can start trying to do too many things. And so I think that having a good team around you that's balanced, that can bring you back in and say, hey, let's focus on this first. And, that's a big part of being able to sit down and just really, even chart out what is the course going to be for this year, the next 18 months, the next 36 months for new barn builds or launching new products or answering these kind of questions and making sure we've got this resolved. And on top of that, the retention of your employees, which is immensely challenging here. And which, I think all about, just finding employees and putting them in the right place. And so, on top of that, you're just trying to make sure you got enough bodies to make sure that the work every day is getting done.
Yeah. And you know what? I want to ask you this. You mentioned the team and the retention and recruitment and whatnot. Polar Egg sounds like it's a unique place and a challenging, like there's a lot of challenges moving forward, but good challenges. Tell me about the type of individual that best fits within the Polar Egg team there, because it must be a very unique type of individual that you're looking for, some special kind of quality, is it not, Kevin?
Absolutely. And, the challenge has been finding the balance because it's a small organization and, as a grading station, it's a pennies game, so things are really tight.
Yeah.
And, we put tens of thousands of eggs through and, the larger graders are probably putting 1 million eggs through in a day. And, so you still are in some capacity competing, with that price point when you're going to your supply chain. And so, it's that a challenge to find that balance of bringing the right people in. At the same time, we can't compete with government wages in the north. And so, when I started building the team, I started looking at people who really wanted and were interested in not just having a job, but really interested in being a part of developing this movement. And so they've been people that have been growing with us. And so, they came in and they spend their time on the line, and then we've moved them into management positions. And we've, as they've had, a chance to get a sense of what our operation is like, we've started to find what their strengths are. And so, I want people that can think creatively.
Yep.
I want people that are able to come in and say, hey, Kevin, why don't we try it this way? Or, if we did that, it would be faster. Or if we did that, it would be more efficient. Because there's lots of eggs that are moving in and out of the machines and you're putting together orders, and we have, eggs that are going down to industrial product that are moving out of our station to other parts of Canada. And so there's multiple things that are happening. And so, we really like to have people that I can trust and that are willing to, to bring some creative ideas to the table. And, I'm really confident that as we grow, that they are going to continue to grow with us. And so we've had a pretty solid core team for the last several years of fantastic people that have helped really refine our production and start to get us thinking about, different things that we could be doing.
Well, listen, I'll tell you this, from my profession on the recruitment and retention side, you're on the right track. Companies that really invest and care about their staff, like you said, we bring the people on the production line, we move them into management, we see where their strengths are, we highlight those strengths, and it sounds as though you've got a family there that really care about not just the product, but also the movement and what you guys stand for. So when a company and the senior leadership is bringing that message and that ethos to everybody that's on there, trust me, from my experience, you're on the right track, and I'm not surprised that you've got some very long-term employees and staff and members with you. Let me ask you this, Kevin. In terms of, I find your story fascinating, and there's a huge need, if you ask me, about bringing quality food to the North, the health reasons, financial reasons, everything. But if somebody's interested in knowing more about Polar Egg, what's the best way for an individual to reach out to yourself and the team there at Polar Egg?
Yeah, our website, polaregg.ca, is probably the best way. You can send us a message through that. You can find Polar Egg on Facebook as well and send us a message there, and those come directly to me. And so that is something that we really would love to see. We would love to see people coming north that are passionate about being a part of developing this food network and being a part of bringing their expertise and their thoughts and ideas to what's happening up north. And there's a lot that's happening right now around foods. There's a lot of discussion, and so there's a lot of interest. But, I don't see that as a negative, because, the challenge, and I mean, even for, moving up here from somewhere else when I was young and interacting with a lot of people who move north, it's like that anywhere. You go somewhere, you have your own set of ideas and experiences, and you come into a new environment. And I want the feeling when people come north to be one that you're welcome here. We don't want it to be that, you got to come up here and pay your dues. Listen, if you come up here today and you go for a walk with me and it's minus 45 with the wind, you've paid your dues right there. You're part of the northern experience, And so trying to get away from this attitude that you've got to do a certain thing or achieve a certain thing before you can be a part. I think that, we welcome people with open arms to say, hey, come and join us and be a part of this adventure, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. And, I think, again, the challenges that we have here are not unique to just our community. You go to any remote community and they're probably facing a lot of the very similar things of not just with food, but socially and isolation and the transportation factor. Yep. And so when we welcome people here to become a part of this story, then they can bring these experiences back to, to wherever their home is. And we become a little bit richer as Canadians when we've had a chance to do that.
Listen, so you're telling me, Kevin, if I come up there and it's minus 45 and we're out for a walk and my eyeballs freeze, that's the Northwest Territories version of being screeched in?
I guess so. I think right now we're probably not the only ones that are facing cold temperatures across the country. So it's been it's been cold everywhere. But certainly we would love that's a great way to introduce you to the beauty of the North.
Well, listen, I'd love to go up there. I really would. It's I love travel. I've traveled quite a bit around the world. The places that I have not hit in Canada are the territories, the far north, and believe it or not, Prince Edward Island. Everywhere else I've hit, but I think on my bucket list before I get too old is Northwest Territories. And trust me, if I'm up that way, I'll make sure I knock on your door, and hopefully it won't be minus 45. I'll go in better weather, but we'll go for a walk and talk, eh?
Absolutely. Well, any time of the year is beautiful here, and we'll look for an opportunity to bring you up, because the North is a beautiful place, and I think that it gets in the blood of people who come. And the Yukon, as you say, is gorgeous. Nunavut is incredible, and as you have a chance to be a part of these adventures, I try and keep that in mind as I travel from community to community, to just stop and recognize just how incredible our country really is. And I'm very grateful to have had a chance to travel not only throughout the north but other parts of Canada as well, and to always be in awe of what we have, and the freedoms and opportunities that we share. So it's a really great place, and we certainly welcome people to come and join the adventure.
Listen, Kevin, we're almost out of time. I appreciate greatly you educating us and telling us more about Polar Egg, but also the North, and some of your passions and values as you carry on with Polar Egg. But just before we leave, give us a takeaway. What would you want the listeners of Work Passion Fit to know about yourself and also about Polar Egg?
The great thing about Polar Egg is that I really feel it's a foundational piece for what we want to do with food in the North, in the sense of just bringing people together. And, we brought government and industry and nonprofit and the supply chain, bringing a lot of voices together. That it's about cooperation, which is sometimes not always a popular thing to say in business, because it can be a little cutthroat. But there comes a point where we have to recognize that we either work together or we die alone. And I think that what Polar Egg has represented for me is an opportunity for us to get involved in supporting backyard chickens and small-scale poultry and things that would, technically go against our business model. We're helping people create eggs when what we do is sell eggs. But it's not just about the sale of eggs. It's about understanding that our company is about promoting the idea of food and about people taking responsibility to be a part of that project. And if it's buying our eggs, or if it's, retweeting or commenting when there's an opportunity, or sharing the story, it's something that we're doing cooperatively. And I believe that, as we are faced with greater challenges in our economies and our industries in Canada, that cooperation is something we don't have to be afraid of. I mean, obviously, you go in with the awareness that it's a big wide world out there. But when you can see people coming together and sharing their passions and sharing their vision and working together to support and encourage that, even when sometimes they're in the same industry, that's something that really, I think, speaks to what we really need to have at our core, and that is a passion to see one another succeed, and that we are able to share what we can to help each other do that.
Hey, listen, Kevin, on that note, I need to thank you kindly for joining us today and once again sharing your thoughts and your values and your passions. So thank you kindly, eh?
Well, thank you, John, for the invitation. I've really enjoyed this, and thank you for sharing our story, and thank you for being a part of it. And look forward to connecting with you again in the future, and keeping you updated on how things are progressing.
Absolutely, Kevin. I look forward to it. And thanks for joining myself and Kevin today. If you've enjoyed the show, please give it a 5-star rating and share it with your friends. If you have a story to tell and are passionate about your work, I'd love to have you as a guest. You can contact me at john@theoanera.com. That's JOHN@THEONERA.com. Or you call me directly at 1-519-579-6671. If you need help finding and retaining the right fit for your business, give me a call as well. For the past 20 years, my firm, Theonera, has been providing recruitment and retention services to our clients at an affordable fixed cost. You can reach me at john@theoanera.com or 1-519-579-6671. Thank you for sharing your time with me today, and until we speak again, do take care.